what assurance do you have that what you tested yesterday is the same as today? So that's another challenge, that there isn't much visibility around kind of version changes and changes like this. So when you think about gaining PCI compliance, I mean, that at the moment is a point in time, but they're looking at, okay, can they make it less a point in time and more a kind of, general thing? And I'd really be interested to see how they even think to do that in this environment. Visibility, really obvious. You only get to see what your provider lets you see. So you probably can't see, depending on the cloud provider and how they've coded the application, you can't even get basic security logs out of it. Yeah. So I mean, let's take Amazon for example. If you log into Amazon, if you make loads of failed login attempts, or someone tries to break into your account, you've got no visibility of that whatsoever. It's kind of scary because that's infrastructure as a service, and if you're running, a whole bunch of servers in the cloud and someone does successfully break into your account, then that's like they've suddenly got your infrastructure. So the lack of visibility in the cloud just around basic kind of checkbox auditing items that you'd expect to be in any kind of modern operating system, they haven't implemented that at the cloud. So I'm not saying that's everybody, but it's just you have to go through that really kind of dreary, boring auditor checklist kind of thing to say, well, does it have this, does it have this, what are the password policy controls, all that good stuff. And at the moment, because it's immature, and I'm not saying it's necessarily massively insecure, but it's just immature, so they don't have this stuff, and you'll just find yourself asking for stuff which, if you go to Amazon, if you go to the online forums, you've got all the people saying, when are you going to implement this or that or the other? They respond to some of it, but there's clearly people that have specific security requirements that aren't met right now. So cloud layers, pretty simple. If you think about how one cloud service provider delivers their service, and you look at the ecosystem around, that you've got this platform with these different third parties that hook into the platform in some way, you start getting services that are layered on top of each other. And what happens when you start introducing dependencies is you need to be able to manage those dependencies, and you need to know what risk level those dependencies introduce. And if you're an attacker and there's effectively this kind of cloud supply chain where multiple providers are providing you a kind of API endpoint, then you're going to go after the weakest company, really, the weakest provider in that chain, and potentially it compromises, the data that you're sending through those other providers. So this is one of those ones where at the moment, I would say it's still kind of early days. There's not too many services like this, but they do exist. But I think in the future it's going to be something really, it's going to be a big deal, because I think outages are going to affect people in ways they didn't expect, because they'll say, well, I didn't know you were subcontracting that part out to there. So it's classic kind of subcontractor concern with outsourcers, but with the cloud it's not always very obvious, and it's not written down. They don't say, oh, well, yes, when you do an API call to us, we're actually doing an API call to this guy over here. That's kind of where your data's stored, because we didn't want to code up that functionality, and they approached us and we said, yeah, we can hook into your API. So that's going to be interesting to watch. I think there's going to be lots of problems in that area. So identity, there's a lot I could say here, but I won't, because otherwise more people will fall asleep. So we haven't solved the identity problem inside large enterprises. Yeah, we may have single sign-on, but we haven't solved the identity problem. So we still have too many accounts. We still have problems reconciling those accounts, the joiners and leavers processes. And on the internet, is it any better? No, it's worse, because every website kind of uses their own authentication method and so on. So whilst there's definitely been some improvements lately, it's one of those things where you just put the internet world and like the enterprise world together, because it's kind of the public cloud thing, and you're just looking at identity going, wow, how are we going to do that right? Now the good news is that there was a project called Project Geneva, and Microsoft had a lot to do with that. And so Microsoft right now, they actually have a way that you could use your internal AD credentials to access their Azure cloud platform. And just a random question, like, that uses a plugin that goes into the PDC. I think that's right. So the random question would be, how many of your organizations someone's installed that like random plugin into PDC? How would you know that? But at that point, they can authenticate out to Azure Cloud Services, and there's this like really quiet grassroots use of cloud stuff in enterprises where it's not officially sanctioned, but people are just, it goes through the proxy that's not being blocked by the whatever proxy filtering software is being used. And so I think with things like this, it's another one where the developers will always go and do what the developers need to get done, and now they have an option outside of the IT department. And I think things like identity and credentials, and that's going to be really interesting to see what pans out there. But right now, there's, apart from Microsoft, really, it's not very. We haven't moved forward. So SLAs, I won't talk much about these, but go and read some cloud SLAs. These make really good reading. And also set up a monitor that checks that web page every day to see what changes. I can't believe. I mean, I get a lot of emails every day which are showing me, this cloud provider, they just changed their SLA or their terms of service, whatever. And sometimes it's just a markup change on the web page, but a lot of the times they're just tweaking. They're tweaking little bits here and there. So it's another one which, we all know the advice on social networks, read the SLAs before you join them. Okay, that's at the private individual level. But with cloud providers, you really need to read the SLAs. And the thing to remember is that you can negotiate better SLAs. Like most of them are open to talking about that. So if your company needs more, you can actually ask for it. It's just there's no form there which says, tell us you want better than what we normally do. You'll pay for it, but that's kind of the whole point of metered services. Terms of service. This is the summary. Essentially, if they screw up, they'll give you service credits. Woohoo! That's really great. I'm really pleased about that. My service was down for 3 days, and you gave me some service credits. Now, okay, that doesn't necessarily change much of what happens today with a provider, but the sensible cloud strategy is to actually use a couple of cloud providers at the same time. Like that's the only sensible way of going about using cloud services for anything important that you care about. But yeah, the change any time thing, that's really so true. They make full use of that. Legal issues, okay, I'll be quick on this one. This is a good one. So this was in Texas. 2 data centers got raided by the FBI. Nothing to do with cloud. They're 2 just standard data centers. And they just went in, took all the servers out of these 2 data centers. And what happened was they thought that all the servers belonged to this one customer. Oops. And there's this kind of comment here, which was that it didn't seem that the FBI understood the concept of co-location. So the cloud is the ultimate colo, yeah. And so you might say, well, that's not good, because if I'm using some cloud services, the FBI could come and do that. It's kind of the same as this situation. But can the FBI or any national agency, can they really now, in the future with cloud, can they really get the data? Because if you've got this orchestration layer that allows you to move resources within seconds over to somewhere else, well, why can't I just move these VMs that I've been using to do fraud on? That the FBI I know are coming to town to grab my VMs. I can just motion them over to another data center, a partner of this cloud provider, it could be another country. And so you kind of got this really interesting thing. Can they, everybody's panicking at the moment about don't use cloud centers because, search and seizure, and so particularly the US is being kind of singled out a bit. But the bigger thing, I think, is that the FBI won't be able to get that stuff, and nor will our other agencies. So I think that's going to be very interesting as far as how that changes investigations going forward. Of course, then there's a friendly auditor. This auditor has only just learnt about virtualization. And now you're going to talk to him about cloud stuff. Good luck. So you, the customer, become the educator again, where you have to sit down with the auditor and say, yeah, so we're using the cloud, and we've got the SLAs and everything in place, and they're just like, well, what are you using it for? So